a good thing we have Google today to keep track of it. I find it fascinating. When I was in school, there were no calculators. My first computer I didn't see until I was overseas a few years. Today we have vast amounts of knowledge. You can type a word into Google, and in seconds or less than seconds, you can come up with millions of contacts with that one word, more than you could read in a lifetime. I find it interesting. But you know, knowledge is not wisdom. Your parents have a type of wisdom. It comes from experience in life. One of the things I want to encourage you with as young people is not to try and correct your parents too many times in the next few years. They're probably right anyway, and that's because they have the experience of life, and so they have added that type of wisdom to their knowledge. They may not have all of the knowledge that you have, because times change, things change, the way our world works changes. Believe it or not, it was 56 years ago that I finished the 8th grade. Now that's like a half a century plus. For some of you, that's an impossibility, but before you turn around 3 times, you'll be where I am today. You will think also as young people that we turned the world over to your parents to run, but we didn't. They thought we did. We kept our hands on the controls. We still worked, we still voted, we still influenced, but now we're turning it over to you. And so you have a great responsibility to take care of the world that we give to you. Your parents are still there, they still have their hands on the controls, but it's now your world. I was listening to the radio yesterday. Dr. Michael Youssef was preaching on wisdom. And he pointed out the fact that there are 4 different types of wisdom. There's natural wisdom, which is what your parents already have from the experiences of life. There is worldly wisdom, the wisdom that looks away from God, the wisdom that looks to itself, the wisdom that justifies sin. It's the wisdom that's from Satan. It's the wisdom that God hates, the wisdom that God battles against. And of course, there's God's wisdom. In thinking of God's wisdom, if you go back to the early chapters of 1 Kings, you'll find the wisest man who ever lived. He was the wealthiest and the noblest man of his day, but he was the wisest man of all time because he asked for wisdom, because he asked God to give it to him. So I encourage you in all of life to focus on the wisdom of God. And so a good place to go, of course, is to that man, Solomon, because he was the wisest man, and he wrote many good things to us in God's Word. Actually, when I said you as young people should not try to correct your parents too many times in the years ahead, God said that a little bit differently. He said, honor your father and your mother. But I think that's the idea, that we are to fall in line, we're to be a part of their world, be encouraged by them, and to follow their ideas and their thoughts as well as developing our own. I created this week, last week, something to remind you of our talk this evening, and something that you can take with you. It's called Life. It's actually a puzzle that was invented in the late 1800s. The man who invented it made a 12-piece puzzle. This one has 14. And I've called it Life. It's unfinished. The pieces of wood in it are not varnished, they're not polished, they're not stained, they're just raw wood. You'll find in it some places that are rough. You might find a knothole somewhere. Reminders of the fact that life is not polished and finished when we get it. And you're going to get your puzzle in pieces, because that's the way life comes to you. It's something that you have to put together. You make the choices, you make the decisions. You'll be doing that more and more in the short years that lie ahead as you go from Now into high school, you begin to make choices and decisions of your own more and more all the time as you're going into adulthood and making those choices and decisions. And so as you take the puzzle and work on it, put it together, you have to make the right choices or it'll never go together. The 14 pieces are identical, and it will be interesting for you to play with. Now for you young women, your puzzle is not going to be in pieces because you don't always like to do these kind of things. But I can assure you, if you leave it laying around, your dad will get a hold of it and he'll take it apart and you'll find it in pieces, but he won't be able to get it back together. On one side of the puzzle, you will find your name when it's properly assembled. This one says Joshua. He'd like for me to give it to him that way, but I won't. You'll find your name on one side, and on one side you'll find Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 as a reminder of where to go for your wisdom and who to trust in and what to look to. So the 14 pieces, let's see, Josh. There. You saw it come apart, right? So good, very good. When you come up for your awards, I will have one for each of you. Enjoy it.